be the best point guard in the league. Is that too much? I don't know.
Maybe about it.
Oh, it's
Steph Curry's not in the bubble.
Well, that's right. He is in the league, though. So we'll get into that. Also, top of the hour, very, very excited about this. If you can stick around, if you can be here by 5 o'clock, around 5 o'clock, make sure that you are. Ron Wetzel Sr., an outstanding basketball player at the University of Montana in the late 60s and early 70s, and his son Ryan, who was an outstanding basketball player in his own right. I mean, the entire Wetzel family, tremendous athletes, tremendous basketball players. And they will join us for the ESPN Roundtable to talk a little bit about Don's, playing career, what it was like playing in Cutbank, Montana, and some of the stories he's got are fantastic. But also Walter Blackie Wetzel, who is Don's father, going back yet another generation, was both a diplomat and a representative of the Blackfeet Nation for the United States, or to the United States, government, Congress, etc. Spent quite a bit of time in Washington, D.C., and also was the one who essentially helped to build the bridge and devise what became the Washington football team's logo, which they have used for the last 42 years, Coulter, which, with the change of name that Washington has gone to become the Washington football team, and then presumably something with an actual logo and mascot and so forth. The loss of that logo has been very disappointing to, I think, a lot of people, and certainly to the Wetzel family, not just the loss of the logo in general, but some of the way that took place in terms of the communication or lack thereof with the organization. But as you and I said, the name going away, fine, probably good. But the logo is one of both the most iconic and most, I think, respectable, cool representations of Native Americans in professional sports. And they, argue, and I think probably accurately, is the most recognizable of any of them globally, and to lose that is a significant loss to the Blackfeet Nation and to the Wetzel family in general. So they will join us at the top of the hour to give their kind of firsthand account of all of that, and it was a great conversation. We did this a couple of days ago to make sure we could get it all sorted out properly in terms of the pre-record, but it's an awesome conversation, and Don, first of all, what a storyteller. So that's awesome, and also perspective from the people who are living it.
One of the great traditions of Indian culture, Montana Indian culture particularly, is the passing down of stories, and Don Wetzel has some of the great stories you'll hear. This isn't just about the Washington football team or the logo change. This is about Native American tradition and the affiliation with basketball, why that's maintained as such an important part of their culture, particularly in this state, and also just the impact this has had on their family, not just their immediate family, because, as Ryan told us before the interview started, he said, well, I think that I'm pretty much cousins with everybody that lives in the state of Montana.
Right.
A couple of my good friends are Blackfeet, and a couple of their cousins played at Montana State. And I remember when Leo Davis had his senior day at Montana State, there was more than 200 of his relatives that came to that thing. And it was one of the cool moments I've ever experienced covering college football. They sang him onto the field with a Warriors song, and it was awesome to see their entire family there. Everybody was wearing a number 50 jersey. The entire section of Bobcat Stadium filled with number 50 jerseys. Super cool. But we get into all of that, and then also the dichotomy of what this has been, because on one hand, I think I agree, the name itself is something that needed to be changed. I think the impetus for the name change was less than savory.
Well, of course. Look at who we're dealing with here.
It's Daniel Snyder, the worst owner in the history of professional sports. But I think it was a sad day, though, when the logo was removed, because I think it was one of the most positive representations of indigenous culture that we had in America. And I know it brought a lot of pride to a lot of Native people around the state of Montana.
It also, and by the way, so again, that's at 5 o'clock today, being Wednesday, Wing It Wednesday. I did my questions, Colter. You're going to be so proud of me. The questions that I got for the people here today. We're going to send you over to the Desperado Sports Tavern to get yourself some wings, the best wings in the city of Missoula. We're going to have some fun today playing with these questions around here. So 361-3688, the phone number. All guests join us via the Rankish Brothers RV phone line. You can text that line as well. And remember, give us a call. 4:30, we will get into a little bit of Wing It Wednesday, 361-3688. If you want to listen live, by the way, you can do so on the web, 1029ESPN.com. You go to our website, you listen live on the stream. The stream is available thanks to Opportunity Bank. Opportunity Bank, your local bank, your opportunity. The reason I mentioned that I was a little discombobulated is because our studio, and this will not come across except for when I'm stuttering and stammering on the radio, but our studio has taken a significant step forward. And we have two, big old flat screen televisions in here that are now the new control panel and the SWX feed, and the narcissist, arrogant jerk that is Tootell can't stop looking at himself.
Well, see, I can't stop looking at myself because I can't believe that they let that guy be on TV.
False. Look at you, Svelte. You're wearing white today. You look great.
I only spilled on myself once today.
I must say, for being 4 o'clock and change, that's as clean a white shirt as I've ever seen you wear. Usually by this time, it looks like polka dots. Mustard, some coffee, a little bit of jam. Who knows what's going to land on that thing? So nice work, Colter. Way to keep it clean for the show today. Appreciate that. Colter, let's get into a couple of things here. This is really more news. We're not here to sit here and talk about this too long, but Dixie State...
I'm tired of talking about it.
I know you are. But Dixie State was the last remaining opponent that Montana State may have had on its schedule. Montana State practiced for fun. It's not even like they were preparing as if they had an opponent that they were going to play, but officially today, Dixie State canceled their fall sports, thus any remnants of a possibility of a scheduled game with Dixie State, which Montana State did originally have on their non-conference schedule, es no mas. So it is that's out the door.
I think that I'm trying to rack through every schedule rapid fire as I can, but I can't say with full certainty, but I believe that means that all non-conference games for Big Sky schools have been canceled. Mm-hmm. Because, as we know, Division II canceled, so every single down game is gone. Every single money game is gone because the only money games that Big Sky schools usually give is the Pac-12. It's a rare occasion you play a Big Ten like Idaho did when they went to Penn State and lost by 70. But with no Mountain West games, no, and then the cancellation. Dixie State was an interesting one because they had to make the decision on their own. Because for those that follow, Dixie State was in the Great Northwest Athletic Conference for football, which is a very strange league because the GNAC is a great league when it comes to basketball. Alaska Anchorage, Alaska Fairbanks, Central Washington, Montana State Billings, but none of those schools besides Central offer football. So the GNAC is sort of this haphazard league. It has Simon Fraser, which is the only Canadian school in the world that plays American rules football. Central Washington, Humboldt State, Dixie State, and previously Western Washington, but they dropped football too.
Yeah.
So it's one of the only Division II leagues that doesn't get an automatic bid. That's why Central Washington's run, especially last decade, was so impressive because they had to get an at-large bid out of a conference that didn't have an automatic bid. But Dixie State has then now moved up to the FCS, and they were planning on playing an independent schedule this year. So they had to cancel it on their own. So I believe that's the last non-conference game that was on the docket. Because there is Missouri Valley games still going. So I guess that's not true because Idaho State has a game against Northern Iowa that's still on the docket. So there's a few Big Sky games left, but they continue to dwindle by the day.
Well, the thing, this has been my presumption ever since the Big Sky Conference announced that it was going to be eliminating, football this fall and, planning or trying to play a season in the spring, but that the non-conference games could be played either in the fall or the spring. I just assumed that that had nothing to do with the games that were currently scheduled. Like if
you thought there'd be like new games,
and I still assume that. Like I don't think that it's going to happen. I don't know why any team would until maybe it was later and they felt like it was a nice fall warm up to get ready for spring when they weren't going to play anything other than conference games. By the school's decision, as the University of Montana has said, they're only playing conference games in the spring. Obviously, they already stated as well they're not going to play a non-conference game this year, regardless of when. But I just assume that maybe a couple of teams would go, hey, you know what? We're going to have 10 fall practices, and we'd like to have those 10 fall practices also accompanied by 2 fall games. Let's see if we can find anybody to play, that we can get a home game and maybe a road game and get a couple of non-conference games with a couple of other teams that would, that would just be out there that weren't originally on the schedule. The idea that you're going to play any of the non-conference games that were, quote, originally scheduled, I had that ship sailing a long time ago. I assumed it would all just be new stuff that ADs had put together on their own.
But when do you play them?
Whenever you want.
How? I mean, there's no the spring proposal is to start the last week of February. You're not going to play games before that.
No, I'm saying in the fall. I'm saying.
You're thinking there's just the non-conference is going to be scrapped, and if people want to explore getting new ones, they could.
Totally, and you could play them in October or November. You know what I mean? If it coincided with something like a fall, quote unquote, what do you call it? A fall practice schedule or something like that, because you just wanted to do it. Now, again, a lot of that hinges on eligibility factors. Obviously, everybody has 4 games that they can play without using a red shirt, but nonetheless, would you want to play 2 utterly meaningless and completely removed games 3 months before a potential season that could be 2 games towards that red shirt? And I don't know what the NCAA can and will rule, but I assume if it's going to happen at all, it's going to be new games that have not been scheduled.
Well, I just don't think that anybody's going to show up. Not fans, players, because you mentioned the 4 games for guys that haven't used their red shirt. But say you're a guy like Sammy Akim from Montana, or you're a guy like Jace Lewis from Montana. You've already redshirted. And say there is a chance you could play 2 or 3 non-conference games in the fall, and then the spring season doesn't happen.
No, it would.
Then where are you at? Because there's no rule for this. And there's no guarantee the NCAA would give you your eligibility back.
And the NCAA, no football team is going to do it without knowing the answer to that question that you're asking.
Right.
The NCAA would have to, and clearly they're not good at this, give some information and make a decision about the eligibility of those players, prior to that being made. But the idea that, well, Dixie State's still out there, maybe September 12th or whatever the date was, the Bobcats are playing football. Well, no, obviously that ain't happening, whether Dixie State itself is called it's, said they're out or not. Here's what I think is interesting, though. The Big Ten is out, but Nebraska doesn't want to be out, and they've stated that from the top down.
Right.
As of right now,
they're in the wrong league.
As of right now, the Missouri Valley has not canceled fall sports or canceled football. So one of the teams that would make a ton of sense for Nebraska to play, it seems to me, is North Dakota State, if they were still going to be a go.
No question. It's one of the most undertold stories of this entire Nebraska was would you say among or the dominant program in college football of the late 80s and early 1990s?
Yeah, I mean, them in Miami, right?
3 straight national titles in the mid-1990s. That doesn't lie. Tom Osborne, one of the greatest coaches in the history of college football.
Yeah. Imagine if Ozzie and Tom switched roles.
I'm confused.
Ozzie Osborne and Tom Osborne. Now, would that be... What would be weirder, Tom Osborne playing with Black Sabbath or Ozzie coaching Nebraska?
You could see Ozzie doing anything just because he's such a nut. Tom dressing up in all black and playing the bass, biting the bat. No.
Now we know he's not dressing it. Well, he could do the All Blacks because
black
shirt, with the O line, so he could do that.
But part of the Nebraska magic, where did it move to? Fargo, North Dakota. Craig Bohl is a Tom Osborne disciple.
Right.
They fashioned their program after the Nebraska.
Yeah.
So there is a ton of connections there. How good is NDSU? That's been the question that's been asked so often because we know that they are peerless at the FCS level. They've lost 8 times in 10 years. It's ridiculous. It's become out of control at this point. The gap continues to widen. I mean, you lose a coaching staff and a star-studded class of guys, including multiple guys who go to the NFL. And, I mean, you replace a guy who's a 7th-round draft pick, which is a high feat for an FCS quarterback, with a dude who's the number 2 overall draft pick in the entire NFL draft in Carson Wentz. And then you replace him with Easton Stick, who might start for the Chargers, if not now, someday. And then you got a dude who might be the top overall pick in the draft by the time it's all said and done. Not this year, obviously, because Trevor Lawrence is going to have that crown. But the rich keep getting richer. Their players keep getting better. Nothing can derail it. But there was going to be such an interesting test this year. NDSU was slated to open up at Oregon. Oregon, on one hand, is looking to replace Justin Herbert. Big hole to fill. On the other hand, they're still going to have the best offensive line in the country. They returned, I think, 4 out of those 5 guys that were on that line last year. All sorts of skill guys. That was going to be a fun game. How does NDSU stack up? Well, now they're exploring playing Nebraska. I mean, what do you think? I think that it's like even money NDSU at Nebraska.
I think I was going to ask you that exact same question.
No, I'd say
51-49 Nebraska.
I say Nebraska's a 3.5 point favorite in that game. I mean, the line would probably be more like 10.
Yeah, the line would be much higher, but
in reality, I mean, it's hardly a mismatch, right? I mean, you're talking about 2 teams that are probably ranked in the 40s or 50s of college football teams in America.
Right. In this run, NDSU has beaten Iowa in Iowa when they were nationally ranked.
Right.
They beat Kansas State. Did they play Iowa State and win a number of Big 12
Yes,
teams?
they have. And they beat Minnesota. They have won, I believe, their last 5, maybe even their last 6 FBS games.
I would say that I feel like Scott Frost is starting to get that thing going in the right direction, and I think that Nebraska
is he though?
Yeah, I said starting. I mean, it's slow. It's slower than people thought, but
I think that somehow, some way, somebody along the lines bought into the fact that
how many years has it been there? 2 or 1?
I'm trying to phrase this in the right way though. They were never as bad before Scott Frost as they've been with Scott Frost.
No, that is absolutely false.
I mean,
it's absolutely
didn't Frank
false.
Solich win 9 or 10 games before he got fired? Didn't Bo Pelini win 9 or 10 games before he got fired?
In 1995 and 2000, yes. In 2014 and 13 and 15, they were terrible.